My children know, my students know that I don't treat them any less than I treat my son.
You have to have a passion for teaching. If you don't have a passion for children, don't stay in the classroom because you damage lives.
A teacher needs to be a motivator, an advisor, a listener.
Because there are so many of our children in this country who do not have persons who support them, coming from homes with parents who support them. But if they have one teacher.
One other thing that our parents need to understand, schools cannot and should never be treated as a daycare center.
Most of all, talk to your children to ask them, as parent to child, how can I love you better? And listen.
Parents need to check the books, check the notebooks.
I've seen children at the park. I've seen children at the bus terminal kissing openly and adults walking by. Nobody saying anything to them.
When you see something happening on the street, you know, if you don't feel like you can get involved, at least call the school.
And if we're going to win the battle against indiscipline anyhow, it means all of us will have to come on board and all of us have to speak in the same voice. And that is why the saying would have been, it takes a village to rear a child.
I taught at Arden High School first of all, and then later on I taught at Manchester High School, and then I went to St. Andrew High School for Girls where I met you, Shelly-Ann, and then I became vice principal at St. Andrew High School and left from there to go back to Arden, my alma mater, in January 2000, and I was there until August 2011 as principal.
I've been in the classroom for 16 years. I remembered when I just left the University of the West Indies, one of my then pastors, told me about the job opening. And I said, why not? Because I loved working with young people, through the church, and it was very important for me when I thought of being a missionary, working with young people. What better place to be, the classroom, a training ground where I would be able to mold the lives of young people and impact our future leaders.
I'm a past student of the Old Harbour High School, did my 5 years as a student. I was called back when I went to the College of Agriculture, Science and Education case by our former principal, Mrs. Joycelyn Clark. So I came back under a little of pressure from her because when I went to the College of Agriculture, Science and Education case, I never went there to be trained as a teacher. I was trained as an agriculturist. So she knew of my training in agriculture. She wanted some help at the time in her agricultural program. And I said to her, okay, I'll give you 2 years. So I went with the intentions of giving her 2 years. My 2 years changed to 22 years. So I started out as a regular teacher teaching agricultural science. Later on, I was promoted senior teacher, then vice principal, and now I'm serving as the principal. So it's quite an honor to be back at my alma mater serving the capacity as principal. It means that as principal, coming through the ranks, I pretty much know the crevices within the institution itself. And that is what I'm trying to do as best as possible, to solve the different problems that we're faced with, so that at the end of the day, our learners can fit within the marketplace of Jamaica.
I believe that a teacher, one, needs to be a role model, an example for his or her students.
One, to have a passion for knowledge, to want to learn, to always know that there is more.
Our teachers have to teach from the heart. It must be a situation where our teachers are going to have what is called the care factor.
I can remember one day specifically, and this was actually while the student was in school, where there was a young lady who I thought really never liked me. She didn't listen to anything I had to say because she just thought that I was on her case too much. But then apparently one night she had an altercation with her mother and she was physically abused by her mother. She got to school early the next day, and when I got to school I heard that she was looking for me. Of course, that was quite weird because I'm wondering, why did she want to see me? However, when I eventually met up with her, I realized that, she wanted somebody to talk to, somebody who she knew would help her and solve her problem. And that's exactly what she told me. Miss, I knew you would be able to help me. And so that's why I came to you.
You'll hear individuals from time to time talking about studying in America is much, much easier than studying in Jamaica. I don't think that is totally true. What I can share with you is that the teachers in the States, they are being held accountable, and the teachers too there, they have what is called the care factor. It has to be a situation where we're going to be caring about the individual. So it's not about teaching the curriculum, but it is about teaching the student, teaching the individual.
And also to love children so that you are able to see that you can have an impact and shape a life and make a difference. Because there are so many of our children in this country who do not have persons who support them, coming from homes with parents who support them. But if they have one teacher who believes in them, that makes such a difference. And this is my gospel that I keep going around and telling teachers, you can make the difference in the life of one child, and that one child makes the difference in the lives of so many others. So it goes around.
So let us take, for example, we find out, based on our investigation, based on our communication with our children, we recognize that they all learn differently. And because they all learn differently, then we must now cater for their individual needs. It is going to take some time for you to do all of that, especially when you have a class size of 30, 35. But what it's going to take that we're going to formulate, we're going to put together a curriculum that is going to meet the need of all of these children. And once you have that care for them, that passion for them about teaching, and want to ensure that at the end of the day, it is about building a Jamaica. And I think if our teachers have that concept in mind, that look here, let me help this Jamaican brother, let me help this Jamaican sister, because at the end of the day, if you help this Jamaican brother, this Jamaican sister, you are actually helping yourself. It is about teaching a man how to fish rather than to give a man a fish. So a young man on the corner don't have to stand up and be there waiting for you to say, "Want boss, make a thing go on for me now." You would have helped him in the classroom. You would have recognized that he's struggling with some things. And as leader, teacher leader, the teacher leader must also communicate, principal, vice principal, we're having some challenges with this young man. What can we put in place to help this young man?
I was asked to be interim principal at Tarrant High School for a term which became a year. And Arden is on the west and Tarrant is on the east in terms of experience. But what I did when I went to Tarrant was to do focus groups with the students at each level, and I gave them 7 questions. And I asked them to respond. And the questions essentially asked them, what do you like about your school? What do you dislike about your school? And one of the things that stood out for each group was they hated their uniform. They used to wear this black tunic. And they said that people called them funeral home workers. And they just felt so terrible. So when I discussed with the teachers, the homework teachers told me, Mrs. Tyson, we have the pattern for the uniform using the school's colors, which were blue and gold. So I said, let me see it. And when I saw it, I said, why haven't we done this? Well, for whatever reason, it had not been done. I determined we're going to do this because it was a low-hanging fruit. We did not have to spend a lot of money from the school's part to do that. So the last term of the school year, I was there 2013, 2014, we decided to do samples of each uniform because there was a uniform for lower school, one for 10th and 11th, and one for 6th form, and for boys and girls. And we ordered new ties and new pins that I ordered from the same suppliers that what I ordered at Arden. And the students modeled the uniform. Let me tell you, you should have heard the students in the auditorium. There was just spontaneous roar of approval and excitement. And I'm saying to them, okay, your parents cannot afford to just get rid of all your uniforms, so we will phase it in. When you come in, the new students in 7th grade will have the new uniforms, those in 10th grade, whatever. So, you know, some of you can still be wearing the old uniform. But I said, I am going to be here the first morning of September because I want to see how you look in your uniform, because there would be a new principal that we had selected. Well, I went down there and there was such a strut. There was just such an excitement just in how they felt about themselves. You saw it in how they walked, you know. And I'm looking around and I think I saw 2 students in the old uniform. And I said to the teachers, what is going on? They said, Mrs. Tyson, the students took the hot iron and burnt up the old uniform, so their parents had to buy new ones. That's what they did. But they look so smart, they look so beautiful. And I've never forgotten that, because I saw hope and I saw a sense of self-esteem in those children just by how they looked. And so that was something that was very precious for me. I'll never forget that.
Over the years, I've been very intentional about the students' academic life. And for me, that's important because you have to leave with something tangible from high school. And as a result, you know, my graduating class last year, I decided that from about grade 8, when I was their grade coordinator, that I would insist on them, you know, being academically sound. As a result, I enjoyed when exams were coming around or test time, because I would have that countdown, that verbal countdown with them. And every time I do my walk and do my rounds, I would stop at the classroom to see if they're, check on them to see if they're studying. And one of the things they reminded me of was that whenever I stopped, I always said to them, you must have a book in hand, because I never wanted them to see them looking as if they were idling. And apparently that had a spill-off effect, I heard, because, you know, eventually, in trying to ensure that they had the book every time I was passing, they eventually had to be doing something out of the book.
There's a boy I saw outside on the corridor, and I asked him why he was there, and he said the teacher asked him to leave the classroom. And I was disturbed by that. So I took him back to the class, and I asked the teacher to speak with me. And the teacher said, yes, I asked him to leave the class. And I asked her why. She said she asked him to read, and he refused to read. I said, teacher, there are a number of things why the young man would have refused to read. Probably he can't read. Probably he's not an individual who would read openly to a class. And I said to the teacher, there's nowhere in the education code that facilitates us asking a student to leave the class because the student cannot read. So I said to the teacher, I'm going to ask you to accept him back. She was very upset with it. And I said to the teacher, one day this young man is going to be a star. And I think that is what upset her more than anything else, because I said to her, one day he's going to become a star. But indeed, he's a star today. A superstar, doing extremely well. So that was one particular case. There was another case where I was settling the corridors, and I saw 2 young men outside on the corridor, and I asked them why they were there, and they said, sir, we're not doing English in CXC, and because of that, the teacher asked us to leave the class because she's not preparing us, because we were not studying for English. Having those 2 experiences, I was disturbed by both. So I called the staff together, and I shared with the staff what I have experienced, and I said to the staff, we can no longer participate in this practice wherein we're going to screen our students. So I said to them, staff, we're now going to have mandatory signing, wherein we're going to sign every child that comes through the gates of Old Harbour High School for exams. Whether it is going to be CSEC exams, whether it is going to be CAPE, whether it is going to be Hartrust NTA exam, whether it is going to be City and Girls.
When I went to Ardennes, as I said, that's my alma mater, there was a practice of streaming students. And there was a practice of students when it's time for exam in 11th grade, the teachers used to sign to decide which students would do the CSEC exam. And I looked at the quality of students that we had started getting at Ardennes, and I said, they can manage the exams. We have to put our minds to it, and we have to find the strategies to help them, to guide them to know how to achieve in success in the exams. So I discussed it with my VPs, my senior teachers, and I said, I am going to cancel that approach. I'm going to allow that once a student has been assigned subjects at the end of 9th grade, they must carry through those subjects until the end of 11th grade. All of the subjects. Each student must do 8 subjects. And this was put in place. Of course, we had resistance, right? Some people were very upset and they felt that, for instance, not all students can do the foreign languages and therefore it should not be. But my challenge to them was, that's why you are educators. You are to find the strategies to help the students to overcome and to achieve what in your subject area. So we implemented that. And that was one of the things that started to push Arden's results up. Because what happened is that the department started to compete. So I would give certificates. At the end of the school year, the beginning of the new school year, the department that has achieved 90% pass rate, and then when they started achieving that, then I started to do certificates for those who achieved the most distinctions. So we kept upping the ante, yes? And the strategies, they started to be very innovative, putting things in place to help the students to learn, and it worked. It's one of the things that helped us to move as a school.
One other thing that I try to get across to our teachers is that failure can be success. Because let us take, for example, you signed the child for the exam this year. The child did not pass the exam this year, but the child has knowledge that you can build on for the following year in a robust evening school examination process. And we have a robust evening school. So the teachers resisted, but I decided that, look here, this is what it is going to be. We're not going to be using a 50% average. As long as the child is registered with us, the child is going to be participating in the exam. And while I was getting the resistance, I made it clear to the students the way forward that we were going. And I made it clear to them, if you are not signed for the exam, just let me know and I'll sign you. Teachers were upset by that, fine. But may I share with you that teachers have been coming and have been saying that, boy, Mr. Wier, it was a good policy.
I find lacking is that when students get to high school, some parents are not as intentional as they were and as involved as they were when the child was doing GSAT or in primary school, because they think that now the child is more mature and now they're more responsible. And I find that to be the opposite, because the teenage years are very challenging. And I think that's when they need the most time and the most support from their parents. And as a teacher, I have to be giving that support, but I need the parents to be on that wagon with me, to be that cheerleader, that supporter for their child, especially at the start of high school, because grade 7 can be very challenging. And so the parents, time from parents and support at that point is very important.
Some parents, once the children reach high school, the first morning they are there and you have to run them and send them home because they want to be at school the whole day with the students. We said, go home. By 9th grade, you don't see some of them because they feel that the children now have gotten big.
May I share with you from all the information that we have seen at our school, the children that happen to do exceptionally well are the children that their parents are totally involved in their life, in their school life, in terms of purchasing the book. in terms of the support. The support is very, very important. It can't be a situation, and I understand clearly, I understand clearly some of our parents going overseas to get the resources to help the children. But we have to be careful with that too, because the same resources that you are moving from the shores of Jamaica to get, you probably have to use that resource in other things, in saving the child as well.
Parents need to check the books, check the notebooks.
And when the child is at home, yes, let them have chores, but do not overwhelm them. So understand that when they come home, there must be time for them to prepare for school, to do homework, and also you must be strong enough to be the parent and not want to be the child's friend. So if it is necessary to turn off the TV in the week, turn it off. If you have to do without watching the TV and your favorite program so you can support your child in terms of being disciplined to prepare for the work, you need to do it. It's not about you, it's about them. And I really believe that as parents at a stage of your life, you have a responsibility to help your child succeed, even to sacrifice some things that you want to do for yourself.
A daily discussion is had with the child to find out how was school today, what happened actually in class today, where is the notes, that you wrote out today. Need to see something tangible in the book so that you can actually know what your child is doing in school and hold them accountable.
And you have to be consistent. Don't make threats you cannot follow through. And as a principal, that was a principle I used, and as a mother, the same thing. I'm not going to say I'm going to do something and then I'm going to renege on it. No, I'm following through with it.
One other thing that our parents need to understand, schools cannot and should never be treated as a daycare center. Parents must understand that education is a relationship. Education is a partnership.
In Jamaica, lawlessness is what is the norm. And so this is what the children are growing up and seeing. So there has to be a deliberate effort to reverse that trend. And it has to start from the home. If it does not start from the home, then that is why in our classrooms, teachers are finding it so difficult to be able to impart knowledge to our students. Because I don't know if you realize that over 60% of the time in the classroom is spent disciplining students, helping them to settle so you can teach. And so there's no wonder that our results are the way they are. And we are lamenting that the results are terrible, but we really forget to understand that there is a direct link between home and school. So where a child comes from a home where they are loved, they are supported, they are disciplined, that child comes into school more ready to learn than the child that comes from a home that's dysfunctional, that's abusive. And that all across the world, the research shows that.
For us to fix indiscipline in school, it means that we will have to fix society. Because we need to understand clearly that school is a microcosm of our society. So if we don't fix our society, our general society, then it is going to be rather difficult for us to fix our young people in our school. Let us take, for example, pornography. Disturbing. Shouldn't be. But if you walk on the streets and the different plazas, you're seeing these images, these videotapes, they're being sold. They're advertised that way. So even walking with your child, you're seeing it. I remember I was walking through the town of Old Harbour with my son, and I'm seeing in the distance the tapes that are being sold. And I held on to his head and turned his head the other way, and he said, "Daddy, what's wrong?" I said, "Well, there's something over there that I really don't want for you to see." The point I'm making here, these are the things that are happening in our society. It's right in front of them. So if we don't fix ourselves as adults, if we don't fix ourselves as a society, then it is going to be rather difficult for us to fix our young people.
From day to day, we get on a daily basis, we get calls from persons, just random persons on the road as to whether our students did something good or something bad. It's very important for us to know what is happening out there. And so that helps to influence what we do, as teachers in the school, as administrators, to help to groom our students. So I wouldn't want to know that something is happening on the road and people just turn a blind eye. it's very important that we look out for each other, because it could be my child, it could be your child, and you would want somebody to be looking out for that child.
I've seen children at the park. I've seen children at the bus terminal kissing openly and adults walking by. Nobody saying anything to them. So they take it that, look here, I can do this and I can do that. And if we're going to win the battle against indiscipline anyhow, it means all of us will have to come on board, and all of us have to speak in the same voice. And that is why the saying would have been, it takes a village to rear a child.
I believe that God's original intent was for man to rule over the earth. And I think that although with the fall there are so many things that have gone awry, still it is God's intent that man is the pinnacle of his creation. And man therefore has this capacity for knowledge and to learn. And I think God wants us to use it. I mean, the scripture says, study to show yourself approved. And although it's talking about scripture, there's still that principle. Study to show yourself approved, a workman that does not need to be ashamed. And although it says, rightly divided the word of God, understanding knowledge and utilizing knowledge in order to help man to rule over this universe. I think that's God's principle. And it's something that, as people of God, that we really should practice.
Not many young people are in our church. And let us say, for example, there are times when I will have to send for parents for different reasons. And my first question to the parent, depending on the conversation and the nature of what I would send for the parent, do you go to church, mother? Yes. Do you take him to church with you? Do you take her to church with you? No, she's not going. He's not going. And I'm saying, mother, how is it you are going to church and you're leaving the child behind?
God wants us to impact in every single sphere that we can. And with an education, you know, you always hear that you can reach higher heights and deeper depths with an education. And so an education opens you up to affect change, affect lives, transform lives. And if you are that soundly educated and confident about what you do, who you are and what you've become, then you'll definitely impact lives in whatever sphere that you are in, because education will help to move you into that next level of your life, into that career that will help you to not just transform your life, but the lives of people who you will interact with. And I think that's God's plan.
Every September, the start of the school year, and every January, the start of the calendar year, we have what is called a week of spiritual emphasis, a week of spiritual enrichment. Because we recognize that many of our children are not going to church. So we're taking church to them in school.
There are so many distractions that they have now. What with the smartphones and the internet and the music, it's to try from the very onset to have a vision of what you want for yourself. You might not know the career exactly, and nowadays careers change so frequently, but you know that you want to be this type of person when you grow up. And think about, work backwards, how am I going to get there?
We must also get our students to the place that they understand clearly too, that they should also take responsibility for their own learning. Because here it is, we have a whole lot of information. Us having more information doesn't mean that we're smarter. But we need to get it across to our young people that with the more information available, you need to read, you need to investigate, you need to research. So Facebook and all these different social media chats that our children are using, it should not just be used for chats. It must also be used for research. So let us say, for example, cell phones in school. And I know that's a topic a lot of us would not want to talk about. But the cell phone can be a useful instrument in the school if it is supervised and supervised properly, because we must get our children to the place for them to understand that having a cell phone, having your tablet, having your laptop, it's not just for social communication. It should also be used to do your research as well.
And I say to students, there comes a time you have to be tunnel vision. You must be tunnel vision. You must know that this is what I must focus on now and put aside these things, because it won't always be forever, but it will be worth it when you reach the end. So for instance, make some decisions not to be on your phones with your friends in the night when you're supposed to be sleeping, because the brain needs rest in order to function well. When you get up in the mornings, to have breakfast. A lot of young people don't have breakfast, and your brain needs to have the nutrition to function well. The research, there's just so much knowledge there, tells you how the brain works these days more than we had before. So rest, water, nutrition is very important. So make those healthy choices in terms of how you manage your body, and also how you manage your relationships. So you can't be having friends who are going to keep you up in the night chatting about their boyfriends or girlfriends, and when you really need to be resting or studying, because that's counterproductive.
For the new school year that is coming up, yes, it's going to be challenging. Nothing is wrong with challenges. It's how we deal with the challenges when they come. Our parents are going to have challenges, but the Ministry of Education is on board to help our parents with the PATH program. Our students are going to have challenges, but our students need to understand that we have teachers who serve as facilitators and instructors. And as the good book would say, ask, knock, seek. And if all of us in this pool together do what is required of us, communicate effectively, collaborate, and think critically, then we are on the path of solving some of the problems that Jamaica currently have.